Hello, and thank you for joining me as I convert this VW Crafter medium wheelbase 21 plate into a camper van. Now in this video, I'm going to be telling you how I went about installing this window over here in my door and the window on the other side there. Now I'm going to be completely honest with you, things didn't quite go to plan and I did end up with a leak on both windows. Now I know exactly what caused the leak. And at the point of fitting the window, I was actually thinking, I need to stop and start again because this is not going to go well. And unfortunately, I ploughed on and it didn't go well. And I did have a small leak. It wasn't a major one, but it was still a leak coming down through the window. Houston, we have a problem. You can see it's raining right now. And this is one of the windows I fitted the other day. Now, if I come inside the van now, you can see the floor is wet. Why is the floor wet? Unfortunately, I have a leak. You can see some water dripping down there and it's also dripping down onto the floor, which is no good at all. And if I look at the top of the window here, we can see the runs coming down the window there, see the water there. We got some more water there and some more water there. You would think this is a bit of a nightmare, but actually it's not too much of a problem because I had exactly the same thing on this window over here. It leaking on the top there, and I know exactly what caused it. It was that sealant I used. It was so hard to get out of the tube. Having a problem when you're doing an installation isn't the issue, it's how you go about fixing it. And of course I fixed that leak. You can't see anything there to show that there ever was a leak, and so everything is good now. And of course you can check out my other video on how I went about fixing both the leaks in both windows. Now, I'm only letting you know this because I don't want you to make the same mistakes as I have. I could have easily edited this out, but the aim of my videos are to help you and give you ideas on how to go about converting your own van. Now, the van build is going really well. I've got my solar panels in and we're just working out the bed. We've worked out exactly where that needs to be now, the correct height. I've cut the bed down. We're using a hot knife, which I've made. So that's gone really well. So now I can finish off the floor. Of course, this part of the floor is already screwed and glued down. So this is not moving because there's a shower in here. You can't see it, but it's underneath here. There's a shower tray, which is underneath all these tools here. But now I've got my bed in, I can now work out the rest of the floor here and I can drop the floor down in the garage. So that's my next job. But going back to these windows, yeah, they've gone really well. I've got this nice silver beading trim around the inside here. Obviously I've carpeted it all the way around. Really happy with that. I mean, straight off, I'm just going to say, if you're putting beading on, put the join at the top. A number of times I see people with it at the bottom or on the side. Put it at the top where you're not going to see it. I mean, why people put it at the bottom where it's on full view, I don't know. But anyway, that's the little tip for you straight off the bat there. And of course, we've got the window in here and you can open that up nice and easily. There we go. There's a window open up. And having an openable window makes it really easy when you're fitting them. That is definitely something to think about. So I've got the window on the door as well. That all works well. So that opens up. And like you saw in the video, I had a leak on this one. It's just dripping down around here somewhere. Actually, you can see the run just there. There's a little run line where water was coming down. And I have no hesitation in saying that is all down to this sealant here. This is... yeah, it's not that it's not any good. It is obviously a windscreen bonding stuff. Is supposed to bond screens. It does say that's what it's for. Windscreen bonding adhesive. It says it on the tube. Okay, but the thing is, it is so hard to get it out of the tube. I warmed the tube up and I was using both hands and I was struggling to get it out of the tube. It was a complete nightmare. I just finished putting all the sealant around. I was just about to stick the window on and I was thinking, this is not going well. This stuff is going off. I still haven't finished putting it on. And that's because this stuff is so damn hard to get out of the tube. So if you have found this stuff is really hard to get out of the tube, then please let us all know in the comments. Now, if you had some kind of electrical gun or something, I'm sure it'd be absolutely fine. It's going to come squeezing out the tube without any problem at all with a gun. And when I put in my back windows, the ones back there, they came with some different sealants. They came with windscreen sealant, and that stuff was fantastic. It was slippery and smooth as warm butter. I was just squeezing the trigger slightly and it's like literally pouring out. Because I warmed it up, it's kind of made it too runny and it came out too quickly. So I actually used a bit too much because I had a lot of waste on the first one I did, because I just put too much sealant on, because I was expecting that it to be really hard to come out, because not having used windscreen sealant, I just presumed all windscreen sealant was hard to get out the tube. Didn't kind of consider that other brands are going to be a lot easier to get out. So that was my mistake there. Now this video is a lot longer than I was anticipating, but I think everything is relevant and helpful right to the end of the video. Right, so let's get started with these windows. Now I bought these windows from Just Campers, and this is the box that they were delivered in, nice and thick and a good lot of bubble wrap around the windows. And they came with 2 tubes of Master Bond sealant, 2 bottles of primer, a couple of brushes and 2 wipes. Now this might be obvious, but it might be possible to fit a window upside down on the wrong side. But at the bottom of the window there, you can see there are drains which will let out the water. So this is my right hand window. Now this might seem silly, but it's a really good idea to make sure before you go cut your hole out that you've actually got the right window. So I'm just testing that now, making sure that it does fit where it's supposed to. And my darling wife should be saying, yes, that fits. It looks like that's the right one.
Yes, that fits.
Another handy thing, if you've got the sliding window like out of here, it just means you can open it and you can carry it really easily. I was really concerned thinking, how am I going to pick this big window up? But with the window open, it's really nice and easy. So little tip for you there maybe. Now I spent some time thinking about what I'm going to do. I've already cleaned the outside, so I've given the outside of the van a good old clean and polish. So here's my door. Obviously these beams here coming down, these are glued to this outer panel here. I've seen people take these off, but I think there's just no point. And then I've already marked a couple of lines. So I'm going to use my jigsaw. I'm not going to use a grinder. I see lots of people using grinders, and grinders just make a hell of a mess everywhere. And they also make a really big burr. So when you finish grinding it all out, you'll find there's a big burr you've got to file off. So that's another reason why I'm not using a grinder. So what I'm going to do is use a jigsaw. I'm going to drill a hole somewhere like here, and I'm going to cut along the top, all the way along, straight along. I'm going to do it from the inside. And then I'm going to come along to here and stop just about here somewhere, or stop when I feel I can't turn it anymore. And then I'm going to do the same here. Going to drill a hole, go up like that, up there. Also going to drill a hole in here, and a hole in there, hole in there. And again, then I'm just going to leave these corners in, because these corners, these are the hardest bits to cut. And I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to cut these, whether I'm going to use the jigsaw or whether I'm going to chain drill it, but they're the hardest bits to actually cut. And I do have an old blade, so I might just kind of try and go around with an old blade, which will probably destroy the blade, but it's another way of doing it. And you can see that I've done the same over here. I've marked that, going to drill through there, cut along the bottom here in one line. Now I thought I'd just mention that I've left my bulkhead in place, because I don't want any of those metal filings or dust or dirt getting into the cab area. And like I said I was going to use a jigsaw, and I just wanted to point out something to you. You probably know this anyway, but I'm just going to go over it again. So I've got a couple of different blades here, ones which are good for it, ones which aren't good for cutting. The larger the teeth are apart, the worse it's going to rip through that metal, and it's going to make a mess and a nasty burr. So you can see these teeth, they're quite spread out. This is for cutting wood, not cutting metal. And then I've got these blades which I used the other day. This is the one I used to cut out the Max air fan. They worked okay. And then I found, what I was looking for, was these blades here. Now these blades have a really, really fine blade on them. The teeth are super, super fine. Don't know if you can see that. See, they're so fine. You can, they're teeny tiny. But that's what you want when you're cutting through sheet metal. Ideally, you should be looking to have between 2 and 3 teeth on the metal. And obviously, if you're trying to cut through with something like this, you just got one tooth and it just literally ripping it out. So we used to work by TPI, which is teeth per inch, but now they seem to have changed that. So these blades they seem to be the same, the letters the same, apart from this is an A and this is a G. So I'm presuming this is the way that the lettering goes for a number of teeth which are on the blades. And you can see it does say metal there, and that one there's metal. And then these ones here, which are proper thin, there for turning and going around wood, and you can see there it says wood just there. These are Bosch blades. I mean, I've only chose Bosch because they're a reputable brand. These are the fine blade I'm going to use, and hopefully I'll end up with very little burr and it's going to go through it smooth as butter. Now, sometimes it's a really good idea to drill a little pilot hole and make sure that the hole comes out where you expect it to. So now I think I'm ready. I've just put a dust sheet down here to catch any swarf, and I've also protected the outside. Now I don't know how well this is going to work. All I've done, I put a sheet of plastic over it, taped it down around the sides, and I put some cardboard down to hold it off the van. So hopefully my jigsaw blade isn't just going to cut straight through it. But we'll find out. So I'm just going to go through a pilot hole first of all, just so I see where these holes are, just to make sure they are where I expect them to be. So I've got to hold the drill this way around because then I can stop it from banging through the van. See where I use my elbow? That's the way I do it. Now on this occasion, putting those pilot holes through hasn't really helped at all because there's nothing really to tell me where they are, other than they are well away from the sides. So this is the drill size I need for my jigsaw to fit through. So I'm going to put that in here. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to drill through in these points here. I'm drilling from here because again I'm going to go this way along because that's just the way my hand works, and same for this one here. I can go both directions then. Right, so I'm going to go from here. I'm going to put my drill up against the edge of the van here. So I'm going to go from this side again. One problem with using a really sharp drill is it cuts through really quickly and then it tends to pull itself in. So now I'm ready to cut it out. So I'm going to do this top line first, and I'm going to put some tape on so that it's not going to just drop out. Quick look outside. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It doesn't look like I've gone through the plastic, but I can see it's catching the swarf nicely. See all this swarf down inside here. That's exactly what I wanted. I didn't want this getting blown around. Now I'm just going to get my ruler and just mark along here so I make sure I cut a straight line. I thought I'd just say, if you're new to using jigsaws and your cut is going to be a bit wobbly, it doesn't really matter because we're not going to see this. We're going to put a trim over the top of it, and as long as it's reasonably straight, then it'll be fine. Now I'm going to speed this up because you don't want to sit there watching me cut around a piece of metal for the next half an hour. It does take a little bit longer using a finer blade, but like I said, you then have less work to do because the burr will be so much smaller. You can also see that I have a piece of wood about the same kind of thickness as the van, and I just let that drop away as I reach the supporting spot, and I just carry on cutting straight through. Obviously I'm just following the edge here and using that as my guide and template, but I'm trying not to actually touch it, so I'm keeping my jigsaw just a fraction away from that. But like I said, you may not be able to do that if you're not used to using a jigsaw. Looking good. A little bit wibbly wobbly. But that's mainly because I can't see because my glasses. I'm looking up and I don't want to look up because then the bits are falling in my face. This should be fine, but it doesn't really matter. And plus my little toes, they were getting really tired then. I was trying to stand on tiptoe so I could see above it, but anyway, let's carry on. When I finished cutting it through the spar, I didn't bother to put that piece of wood back. I found I could just keep the jigsaw nice and stable and steady, and I didn't need that piece of wood to support it. You can see now I just cut up the side here, and then I cut out the corners. So it's going pretty well so far. Stick some tape on here now so it doesn't just drop out on the floor. And there we go, that's some tape stuck on so I can carry on and cut the rest of the panel out. Now I'm going to take this handle off. This is easy. You've got one screw here, one screw here. I've already taken these two out, and then you've got one behind here. The only downside is I don't really want to open the door. Didn't think that one through. Then like I said just then, I'd already removed the handle previously just to see if I could run the jigsaw down the edge there. But to get to that third screw, you just need to pull the handle all the way back. Obviously that would have meant that the door would have opened and it would have messed up my sticky tape and plastic which I've got on the outside of the van. And there we go, and now I've got a massive hole in the side of my van. Now I've just got to decide how to cut the corners out, and you can see I've cut through the plastic a bit there. Maybe that wasn't such a great idea. I'm going to try something different on the other side. Now in the end, I just used the jigsaw and I just carefully cut around. I had to hold the jigsaw on a bit of an angle, and it did mean that it kind of scratched the paintwork a little bit on the inside there, but I'm not bothered about that because I can just paint around there with a bit of Hammerite when I finish doing all the cutting and cleaning off. I could have tried putting some tape on a corner, but I think I probably would have just worn through it. Now I just got to tidy up the corners a little bit. Now first of all, I'm using this grinder / cutter to cut away a little bit of excess metal. Once I've trimmed off the excess metal, I can then go over it with a flapper wheel. Now they are really good, you just got to be careful that you don't slip off and scratch your paintwork on the outside or even on the inside. But they do make quite a nice smooth finish, and obviously you can choose what grit you want, rough to fine, and I just bought these off Amazon. Now I've got that piece of wood in there because the plastic just keeps blowing in and out. Now even though I've gone over the corners with the grinder and the flapper wheel, I still found that I need to go over it a little bit more with a file. It's surprising how much a really good file would take off. One last technique, obviously when you're filing you can go across metal like this, that files it off. If you want a smoother finish, if you go along like this, called draw filing, it just smooths it all off. Be careful you don't slip and cut your fingers, but I'm just smoothing this off now and just going along the edges, deburring it. This is when I wish I had a garage because the wind wouldn't be blowing around. This is what happened before. The wind blew around and it blew all these tiny little bits everywhere. Now because I use that really fine blade, I've hardly got any burr on the inside here, so I can literally just get my file, put it along there, and that's pretty much it. There's hardly any big, well, there's nothing there now. That's fine. All I need to do is just go around this a couple of times, being careful I don't slip off. You can see this filing's coming off there. So I think I'm happy with that. I've gone around it now, filed it all off, so I think I can now start the cleanup operation. So yeah, don't know how well you can see that, but it's a nice clean finish on that all the way around. And let's see how much of a mess it's made outside. And obviously inside here now you've got all this metal here, and this stuff here, this will just stick to your paintwork and it starts going rusty when it gets damp. So you can see on the floor there as well, all those metal filings. That's why I put a dust sheet down. That says done a pretty good job, caught most of it. So yeah, good with that. So there's my hole from the outside. The main thing was not to get any bits on here. That's what I'm looking for. See if I can see anything on there. I can't see anything. There's a couple, so I do have to just wipe this off a little bit. But yeah, that's not too bad. I'm happy with that. And you can see inside here, you've got all those metal filings. They've all fallen down. See if you can see that. And all trapped inside here, which is really good. Now I can just peel off this tape and they're all going to stay in there. Then I just carefully peel off the tape and roll up the plastic. Now it's a cleanup process. And what problems I have, because the wind's blowing, I'm trying to clean this off. And the bits are literally blowing back outside again. And although it's a bit of a nightmare. And that's what I'm up against here when you're outside. Now I actually took these panels off, but I put them back on again to stop the swarf from falling down inside the door. Now even though I put those panels back on again, I've still got a load of swarf inside here. Look at that. So I'm going to have to vac all that out as well. So what I found down inside here, there's some drain holes. So that's why the swarf went down into the door here. So you could just block those out beforehand. There's a couple along here. Got one there, get one there, get one there, one there, and one at the other end. So you could stick some tissue down inside there and maybe just block those holes up. And that will stop swarf from falling down inside your van. A bit late for me now. And that's exactly what I did do when I cut out the other window. And you can see that a bit later in the video. Now it's just a case of getting some paint. I'm just painting over this bit of cut off like that. Now I have heard that you can use the primer that you get with the windows, and that will also prime this. I don't know if that's correct. I mean, it says primer on the bottle, it says metal primer, so I guess it probably is. It's just I think I've seen a couple of videos of people saying it. I'm just unsure, but because I'm also going to touch up this bit of paintwork in here, it doesn't really bother me too much. So see how I'm going to paint over this. So what I'm going to be doing is putting the carpet straight onto this before I put the beading around the outside. That way it's going to make a nice neat finish, and then it's going to be, well, basically finished. And obviously, because it's a second-hand van, see there's screws in here which they've screwed some kind of paneling in. They're all over the place. So I'm just touching those at the same time. So now I've painted all the way around the metal. So we've got a nice finish all the way around on the inside and on the outside. And I've also just touched up all those holes which were pre-drilled by someone else previously. So they're all touched up. And I just gone around the outside touching all this up as well. Like I said, not going to see any of that, so that doesn't really matter. So I'm going to wait for this handwrite paint to go off. You can see it's come around on the outside here. Again, that doesn't matter because we're not going to see it. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Just need to put the trim on, carpet, and we're ready for the next stage. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to draw around the door, and that's where I want my carpets come up to. I want to come up to the edge of the door here. I just got a permanent marker here. So go around that like that. We can see this line now going all the way around. Now I can now put carpet on here. So we've got to be careful now when I slam the door back because that's the door stopper there. So I'm just taking that off. So now I've taped the door up. So I put some tape all the way around following that line. So I can now spray over this with the spray. And what I'll try and do is then to cut the material around here and then stick it down. Rather than trying to cut beforehand, I have to just sort of, I don't know, I'll work out what to do with this thing. Okay, so I decided to just play around the handle and see if I can get it off. It does come off pretty simply. You just got that little clip, let's see if I can show you that. So that just clips in there. See, it's just a tight fit. So you literally just pop that one out. Same for the top one up here. You just pop that one there out. And then you can just gently lift that wire out. It just wraps around the little thing here. Or a little lever, or whatever you call it. It's definitely tricky trying to do it one-handed. The top one came off quite easily. There we go. And then it just goes around the side and it just pulls out sideways like that. Okay, nice and simple. I'm going to say don't muddle these up because obviously this is the bottom one. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that. I guess that one should be shorter than the other one. So you got one in there. And then the other one's down there, and there's the handle here. So that's going to make life a lot easier to put that carpet on now. Give it one last wipe over, make sure it's dust free. The handwrite paint has now gone off. So now I'm going to spray this and glue the carpet on. Now I've heard people say that they take the door off to do this. I mean, that seems like an awful lot of effort to take the door off. I'm just going to do the whole top panel. I'm going to cut into this and put the insulation in afterwards. But the same for this one here. I'm just going to go halfway down and then I can cut it all out afterwards. But to take the door off, wow, that's an awful lot of work. I don't see you would want to be doing that, but maybe you do, but I definitely don't want to be doing that. Okay. So I'm just finishing putting on the carpet around the window. So we got it stuck down. That was a bit tricky. Now I found just using this roller tape was really good for making sure that the carpet was stuck down all over and in all the corners. Like I said, I've heard people say they would take the door off. Wow, that's a huge job to take this door off. Really heavy. You got more chance of damaging your door. I mean, it's not perfect. I went wrong a couple of places, a little bump there, but I'm not worried about that. Definitely way easier than trying to take the door off. I mean, definitely around here was tricky to do because you can't get to it because it's kind of in between, but we figured it out. So what we did with that bit there was we stuck it down. So then we then shut the door. We then marked around the carpet with a pen. We could then open the door again, peel it back carefully because you don't want to stretch the carpet, and then put it back on again. And we did pull a bit too hard and stretched it. There's a couple of creases there, but I'm not too bothered about that either because we're going to be, yeah, they are working out nicely, so that's fine. So I'm pretty happy with that. So it's come right up to the edge here there. Nice little sealer on there. I could have left a little bit more on the top there. You can always peel it back off and spray some more on. Just be careful you don't what you spray, because it's very easy to go everywhere. There we go. I think we're happy with that. Then I found just using a blade was much easier to cut the carpet off. As you can see right there, I'm now just trimming the last bits of carpet off, and now the window is kind of finished. Just going to cut a little slot in here so I can get the insulation into the top of the door there. So now I'm going to put this edging strip on. Now I see a lot of people start from the bottom, from the middle, or on the side, but then the join is obvious. You can see the join. You want to start in the top, or somewhere where you're not going to see it. Maybe off center, but definitely not down in the middle, not on the side is my preference anyway. You can do what you like. You could just do it central from here and start from there. Now we've chosen silver, so this is like a silver color. They had a whole range of different colors. We nearly chose red or blue. They do some different ones, but I think this was 5 to 8 mil, because I worked this out and to be the size, so this should fit on there quite well. And now we're going to get a good finish with this carpet now. That was the plan. This is quite rubbery as well, so it goes on quite nicely. I tried some stuff which came with a window on my other van, and that was a lot stiffer, a lot harder, way harder than this. This is quite flexible, so it goes around corners really nicely. So yeah, I definitely recommend this. Look at that. That's good, isn't it? It's made a really nice corner there. Now I just want to let you know that when I came to do the window on the other side, the gap is actually bigger. So it was a lot tighter to actually fit it on. And in the end, I had to put a little bit of sealant on it to make sure it stayed in place. So do check your van if you're buying some trim to go around your windows. You don't want to get it too small and find that it fits fine on the sliding door, but not on the other side of the van. So maybe get 2 different bits of trim for each side of the van, being different widths. So finally I've just got to cut this off. Now what you want to do there, when you come to cut it off, cut it long, and then you feed it in and it pushes in against it. I'm looking at this piece here, it's not dead straight. I might try and cut this bit here again. So I'll cut it off long, and I'm going to try and just straighten this up and make this joint look neat and tidy. So I left that quite long, quite a few millimeters there. I'm just going to see if that's just going to push in there, because like I said, I want this to be nice and tight, so I'm just going to fold it back like that. See how now as I'm pushing this in now, it's pushing that joint up together, and it should get a nice tight joint like that. There we go. I mean, I can always, the thing is, I can always trim more off, can't trim more on. Now I did play about that joint just a little bit more until I was happy that I got it pretty much perfect. So there we go, I've got the edging on all the way around, and I think that's a pretty good job. Carpet's in there, tucked in there nicely, all the way around the door. Now all I've got to do is just put the window on, and then this is literally then finished. So I'm really pleased with that. It looks really good. I mean, the seam, there's the seam. I could have probably tinkered around with that, make that even better, but I'm happy with that, and I'm happy that it's not down the bottom, because as soon as you look down, you see it here. So there we go, from the outside, you can see the silver all the way around. It's a good job. Happy with that. Now all I've got to do is stick the window in, and it's job done. I've got a few bits of gluey stuff to clear off, which are sprayed out. So now I'm just going to apply the primer around the edge of the window. See, I've got the tape ready to put the window in and stick it down. So we just got that little spongy, paintbrushy weird thing. I'm just going to dip that in there, and then I'm just going to go around the edge, literally around the edge of the window here. Now this came out a lot more wiggly wobbly than I was expecting, and that was mainly because of the gloves. The gloves were kind of sticking to the van. If I wasn't wearing gloves, my hands would have run a lot smoother along the paintwork. Well, that wasn't a great job, but it's on there. I just want to quickly jump in here. If you find this video useful, then please do give me some feedback by clicking on that thumbs up and clicking on the subscribe. And of course, share it with all the other van folks who are converting their vans. And if you're feeling really generous, a cup of coffee is always really appreciated. So I've already cleaned this all off with alcohol. Just make sure there's no grease on it. But now I've got this glass wipe here. Just going to go over it with that. just to make sure. And again, this is like an alcohol wipe, so just going to go over that. Just removes any grease. This is very wet, as you see, but that's what you want. So now clean the glass off with the alcohol wipe. I'm now going to go around it with the primer. Now again, the gloves were quite sticky, which meant that my finger didn't want to run along the side of the glass nice and smoothly. So what I'm doing is I'm holding the brush sort of a centimetre out of my fingers, then I'm putting my finger on the edge of the glass and just running my hand down along the side, and that keeps it nice and straight. Having no gloves on would have made it easier again because my fingers wouldn't have been trying to stick to the side, but I didn't want to risk any chance of getting any grease on the glass. Now this primer stuff, it dries really quickly, so if you need to do any touching up, you need to do it quickly. Now I did go over the drains a couple of times just to make sure I got enough primer over those. And after going around the window once, I then went around it a second time to make the primer line twice as wide, so there was no chance that I was going to miss the sealant when I stick the window onto the van. And there we go, the window is now all primered up. Now it was at this point when I thought we need to wait till tomorrow, because it's actually getting pretty dim now, and I've still got to put the sealant all the way around the van and obviously stick the glass onto the van. Now I thought it was important to show you the difference between this Master Bond sealant and one of the other sealants I was using. Now this is just like a hybrid sealant which I got from Screwfix or Toolstation. It was only about £5, but it's the same kind of thickness as the sealant which I got with the back windows. Dinitrol 500, which was really good, and I'd highly recommend it. Now these nozzles which you get with your windscreen sealant, they're specially shaped, so you get like a triangle shaped bit of sealant coming off your metal of your van. Now you can cut and adjust the nozzle so you get the correct width and importantly the correct height of your sealant. Let's just screw that nozzle on and I'll show you what kind of happens when I squeeze the trigger now. Put it kind of square on your panel, and then as you squeeze it, it then comes out this nice sort of peak like that. Now that's not coming out too badly, but I am putting quite a lot of force on it to get it to come out. And you can see it is a bit wiggly woggly. So I could just cut this back a little bit. So just cut that off a little bit more, make it a bit thicker. And I can make that V a bit bigger as well. Cut that back. So I cut the nozzle and make the V bigger. See, what I wanted to do was to hold the nozzle and then go along like this, squirting it out. It's not coming out too badly, but it is quite hard. And after a while, your fingers start really aching because you're trying to push it in continuously, like that. And again, just follow along the contour of the van, like that. But like I said, that is quite hard to do because I am squeezing quite hard. Okay, but that's kind of what you're looking for as I understand it. So now let's take a look at this cheaper sealant here, see how that one comes out. So let's just stick a nozzle on that. So this is how it starts off a lot smaller. Let's just see what this comes out like. Just going to put that onto there. I mean, I can tell just by squeezing it, that's just so much easier to come out the tube. Yeah, see, I can squeeze really hard and it comes out really fast. And that's the difference. I mean, like, this still works. It just comes out a lot stiffer and a lot slower. So let's just zoom in a little bit. So this is a lot smaller than this hole here. So let's just demonstrate that again up close like this. So I'm just using one hand. So this time I can then hold it against the van. Say this is the edge of the van. I can now just squeeze. See how much easier that comes out. I'm not squeezing hard and I can just follow the van along. And that is a difference. I mean, if I squeeze really hard, you can see it comes out really quickly. I'm getting all this sealant stuck in my hands. I knew I should have put gloves on. So if I just do that again, so you can see from here, if I just put my finger against like this is the edge of the window, I can then just guide the nozzle quite easily now. And I'm not having to squeeze the trigger hard. And I've got a nice lot coming out. And look, that's obviously this is real time. You can see how easily that just comes out along there. it is way easier. And then this was the same kind of thickness as that other sealant which I used on the back windows. Now I just quickly want to tell you something important about these sealant guns. So this little disc here, so it's just a bit smaller than the plunger which it pushes it up against. And it meant that when I was pushing down, it would sort of jump to one side and it would make the plunger go on a slight angle. So what I actually did is I cut a disc out, a piece of metal. So this is a piece of metal which I've added onto here, and I've cut it down to fit kind of pretty much perfectly on the plunger, so it keeps that plunger square. This just jumps to one side of the plunger, which is what it's doing, because when you start going further down the tube, there's more chance of it to move around, and obviously you're putting a lot of pressure on it, and then all of a sudden it jumps to one side, and then the plunger's on an angle, and then you can start having sealant squirting out the side of the tube inside. So do watch out for that, because that can make it really hard to get the sealant out as well. Now back to fitting the window, and my camera's gone a bit weird, trying to make the picture look way brighter than it actually is. Now I should have quit now and waited for tomorrow, but instead I ploughed on. Maybe a lesson for everyone, just take your time. Now the sealant is black and the primer is black and it's getting pretty dim. So it was actually getting pretty tricky to see what the sealant looked like as it came out of the nozzle. Now I cut and changed the shape of the nozzle several times because the sealant just wasn't coming out very well. Now you can see here I've got both hands on the handle squeezing it to get the sealant to come out of the end of the nozzle. This means that I can't hold the sealant gun steady, and so it starts getting all blobby and messy. Let's just show that again in real time. Now I'm squeezing with both hands on the handle, and it's just taking too long for that sealant to come out of the tube. Even though the sealant's been in the oven on the dough-proofing setting, warming the sealant up, it's still way too hard to get out the tube. Now I'm not sure how long it took to get the sealant all the way around the van, but it took way longer than I wanted it to. Now this is something you want to bear in mind when you come to fit your own windows. It may take a lot longer than you're actually planning, and so give yourself enough time. I would also recommend, as a DIY, you want 2 people just to help you line the window up, which is exactly what my wife is doing here now. She's just lining up the end of the window with the end of the door for me. Now it's just a case of pushing the window onto the sealant. Now that I'm happy the window's in the right place, I'm putting the sealant in to stop the window from dropping down. The window will definitely drop if you don't use enough tape. Now I spend some time going around the window, pushing it hard up against the sealant. Something to be aware of is that you can only push the window in so far. Because we've got the trim going around the inside of the window's only going to go up against that trim, and that's as far as the window will go in. So it doesn't matter how much extra pushing you do, once the window is flush with the trim all the way around, the window's not going to go in anymore. So all you can do then is make sure that the window has equal distances all the way around. My advice is to make sure that it is square with the back of the door, because if it's not, it will probably stand out. I did go inside and have a look at the trim to see if the window was hard up against it, which it did seem to be, so I was happy with that. And there we go, I've got more tape on it now, and I'm happy that the window is in its final position. So obviously you know that this window leaked after I finished fitting it. Now I just wanted to demonstrate to you that I couldn't have pushed the window in any further. So I've got a thin ruler here, and you can see I can push it in, and there's a little bit of a gap here at the bottom, but that's not the part where it's leaking. So as I work my ruler up the side of the window, it actually goes tight here. So the window is pushed hard up against the edge of the trim just here. So one of the things that I realized is that window profile doesn't quite match the profile of the van. Otherwise the window would be tight up against the trim all the way around. Because when it comes to the front of the van, the window is tight up against the trim here. So that's tight in there. And then when I move the ruler further up, you'll see that it's also tight. So the whole front edge of the window is pushed up hard against the trim, which means I couldn't have pushed it in any farther. If I pushed that bottom left-hand corner in tighter, it would have lifted the top right-hand corner. And something to bear in mind, depending on your trim, when you push it in, you may find the trim sort of spreads out quite a bit on the corner. And obviously that's going to push the window farther away from the van. Now, if I run my ruler along the top edge here, you can see it slides along there with no problem at all, which means it is a little bit loose. But like I say, I couldn't have pushed the window in any closer because of the trim. Obviously, I'm just letting you know this because I was thinking about this afterwards and why the window leaked. Now, when it came to installing the window on the other side, I did a few things differently. Same as before, I gave the van a good old polish to make sure the paintwork was spotlessly clean. So this time I'm using cardboard and I kind of stuck it all the way around where I'm going to be cutting. Now, because these drain points we got along here, I'm just going to put a little bit of this off-cut carpet here just down inside there. That's going to minimize the amount of swarthy bits falling down inside there. I don't need to push them in far. I just got to tuck them in there like that, and that's going to just minimize what's going to be falling down. You don't have to do that, but I try not to get as little down there as possible. So this time, because I know what I'm doing, I'm not marking anything out. I'm just going to drill straight through some holes all the way around where I'm going to be putting the jigsaw in. So I did exactly the same on this side. I used a fine blade. I just popped it in the hole and then followed the frame around. I drew a pencil line across the spars again and then just cut straight through them with the jigsaw. And I did exactly the same again with the corners. I used the jigsaw, just lifted it up slightly and gradually worked it around the corner. See, oh dear, my cardboard fell off. So my outside my van's going to be covered in swarf. So that worked really well. So yeah, so make sure you stick that down really well. Goodness sake, this works okay. The bits of stuff stayed in there, so maybe that stopped a lot of it from falling in. Now I've just got to go around and just file all these edges down again as before. Let's go and see what the damage is outside. Well, obviously the tape has caught a lot of it. You can see there, so that's not too bad. Obviously I'm going to clean the van off anyway. Actually it looks pretty good. Maybe it only just fell off. There is that possibility. But yeah, the top bit stayed on. Yeah. So I think I'm going to peel this off here carefully, and then I'm going to put some more tape on just to file these edges down. Yeah, let's do that then. Then I used the flapper wheel again and just smoothed it all off. And I didn't bother putting any protection on the outside because I needed to clean the van off anyway. And then went over it again with a file, just deburring all the edges. Then I used my vacuum and sucked up as much of the swarf as I could. And you remember I tucked those little bits of carpets down inside the drains? Well, they work pretty well, and I haven't got hardly any swarf or bits of metal down inside the panel there. Now, this is the very reason why I left my bulkhead in place. Although I was just cutting, you can see there's little bits of swarf everywhere. Look along here, you can see all of the little metal filings. So they just get everywhere. And the dust sheet's done a really good job as well. There it is from the outside. I'm just going to go over it now with some Hammerite and just tidy up those edges and make sure they're protected. But overall, the corners went pretty well, just cutting it all in one go. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, so let's move on. And then the same as before, I used good old trusty Hammerite and just went around the whole thing, touching up all the bare bits of metal. So now I've just touched up all that paintwork, all those screw holes. So that's all good. So now I'm going to put the carpet on. So now I need to fit the carpet and the trim. But this is really frustrating because this side of the van is different to the other side of the van. Now when I measured and ordered the trim, I just presumed that both sides would be the same. But they're not. Now this side has the carpet underneath the trim, but on the other side of the van it's wider. And I cut a little bit of trim off to test that, and you can see when I push the trim on, it actually squeezes the two bits of metal together. And there you go, you can see how that metal squeezes in. Now you can pinch it together, but it's just really annoying. So I'm going to have to do the carpet slightly differently on this side. So on this side, I'm going to have to just butt the carpet up against the edge of the trim like that. Now I do really like this trim. It goes on really easily. It's nice and rubbery and very flexible. So I can push it on around this corner here without any problem at all. When I used some other trim on my blue van, it was definitely a lot harder. So I really like this. And this trim comes in all different colours. So then what I'm going to do is to get a marker pen and just draw around the edge of the trim. Now rather than put the whole trim on and then draw around it, I'm just going to carefully remove it again. Then I'm going to get the marker pen, put it in the same position, and then just follow the contour of the window all the way around. So what I'm using to work this in is the lid. So I'm just going along and just easing it into the corner there. Just going around. The seam's just there. Barely see it. And then I just used my trim tool to tuck the carpet right down inside the edge, and it made a much better finish. So there we go, that's the carpet stuck on now, along with the beading all the way around the outside there. I think that's come out okay. So now I'm just cleaning the outside of the van again using alcohol this time, just to make sure that there's no grease or any glue, nothing on the outside that could stop the primer or the sealant from sticking to the van really well. So now I did exactly the same again. I used some alcohol first of all just to clean the entire window off, make sure there was no grubby finger marks on the inside of the window. Then I used a wipe which came with the kit, tear that open and then wipe around the window again before I apply the primer. Now I'm going to shake the primer up and make sure that that is all mixed together. Now this time I'm not going to wear gloves when I apply the primer, because last time I found the gloves really sticky. They kept sticking to the glass, making it really hard for me actually to make a smooth line all the way down the edge of the window. Now that definitely is a lot easier not wearing the gloves. I think you can see that the line is definitely a lot straighter, and it's a lot easier for me to just run my hand along the edge of the window. And there we go, that's one line of primer done. Now I'm going to go around it a second time with the second line to make the primer twice as wide, so there's no chance I'm going to miss it when I put the window onto the sealant on the van. That's about right, isn't it? Like that. There we go. Put my finger on the inside there. And we can just... And then all I've got to do is apply the primer to the paintwork on the van. Now this time again I didn't wear any gloves, and it definitely helps my hand just to run smoothly along the edge of the van. Now I did get a little run there, but I just cleaned it off with a bit of alcohol before it dried. Now unfortunately my camera decided to stop working just when I was applying the sealant, because I was hoping to show you how I struggled to get the sealant on all the way around the edge of the van. It's exactly the same again. I had to use two hands to squeeze the trigger, which meant I then couldn't hold the nozzle steady, which then meant that my sealant line all the way around was just really blobby. And I couldn't get the sealant to come out of the tube the way it should do. So now it's just a case of sticking the window onto the van. Once again, I'd say it's a good idea to have two people, because the window is really big and it is hard to see exactly where you're putting it. So Donna is just lining it up with the back of the panel, and I'm making sure that I put it the right height. And then it's just a case of pushing the window back against the sealant. Now I'm using a coffee stirring stick to check my distances around the edge of the window, and I found that worked really well. And then it's just a case of sticking tape on to make sure that the window doesn't drop. And there we go, that's enough tape on the top now to stop from dropping. Just pushing it one last time all the way around to make sure that it's pushed back against that sealant. And something I just wanted to quickly point out about these windows is that I could have probably cut the hole in the van smaller, because you can see I've got about, what's that, 2 inches? No, 1.5 inches here, or 40 mil, close to 50 mil I'd say, gap here. So I could have made this smaller. I mean, it would have been quite difficult, because don't forget, you got to line up the window with the outside. So the way to do that would have been to make a template exactly the same as the window, and then mark out where the window goes, and then you get more of a perfect fit. But all the same, it would have been a lot more difficult to do, and you're only going to be gaining a little bit, because obviously you couldn't have cut around here. So you'd have still had the van come around here. You could have maybe dropped it down there. Yeah, I don't know really what to say about that, but you could definitely move this in an inch. Same on the bottom here, because obviously you've got the drains here, but you got this tapered bit here, but you could have made this smaller, or you could have made it smaller. Yeah, so that's something to just bear in mind. I'm not really sure how much you would be gaining from doing that. Obviously there's less glass, so less condensation, less cooling of the van. But is it worth doing all that? I don't know. I thought I'd just add it in there in case you realise afterwards you're thinking, I'd rather actually cut the window a little smaller. But it's too late for me now. My window's already fixed in. But keep watching to find out what I do in the end, whether I put blinds on or curtains, box them in a bit more. We'll have to wait and see. Right, that's about it for the window installation. I hope that's helped you out. If you are fitting your windows and you've decided to use some different sealant, do let me know in the comments. And of course, you can click on that subscribe, ring on the bell, share me with your friends. And of course, give me a thumbs up because that will help the channel to grow. And as usual, a cup of coffee is always really appreciated. Now, the next video obviously will be how I went about fixing the leaks on the two windows.